Unsure how I approach it. I'm coughing up a lung like I got COVID, gas potent. Snapping on the track like poetry, words spoken. I've been in my feelings trying to find a state to cope in. Justice for Breonna Taylor, case reopen. Let that soak in, plain clothes, late night, no knock warrant. Morally abhorrent, bullets pouring, mingled and discordant. Murderous cops let her bleed out and hope she ceased to flourish. All them white lies, hoes in they stories porous. No value for black life, 32 shots, xenophobic. Then play the victim, dog on a nigga like some slavers. No accountability, just one time for white neighbors. And I'm livid cause they take the truth and pivot. Get acquitted above the law when you a bigot. They ask if racism systemic, but that's just ignorant. Them pigs only timid when they see pigment. Whitewash our academics, malicious and malignant, ill-intended. Equality is but a figment. Got two justices, I'm searching for some sort of semblance. No repentance, vicious with a vengeance when I pin this. Protest with lyric and print flow to make some type of difference. I sparked the blunt before I wrote this, unsure how I approach it. I'm coughing up a lung like I got COVID, gas potent. Snapping on the track like poetry, words spoken. I've been in my feelings trying to find a state to cope in.
Buffalo soldier, dreadlock rasta, return of Mosiah, smoke get higher, 13th letter, beast never let up, stay with the get up, fall but you get up.
To be reflected and resurrected by our generation and our posterity. Why should we be discouraging somebody laughs at us today? Who's to tell us tomorrow will
I
bring
sparked the blunt before I wrote this, unsure how I approach it. I'm coughing up a lung like I got COVID, gas potent. Snapping on the track like poetry, words spoken. I've been in my feelings trying to find a state to cope in.
Heavy thoughts on the mental, reminisce on all the things we've been through. Wrote the instrumentals, parked in the rental, non-coincidental. Purple trees burn preferential, bare essential sounds I could stencil. Watercolors or the pastel, smooth acapella, making sales, serving clientele, trying to escape hell. Back in jail, another black male, couldn't post bail. Wasted years, ink dry, tatted black tears, mask on our fears. We was kids, it was simple then. Perfect angel, single, mini Rippleton. Tell me what's the difference when we struggle making dividends. Just by the skin you in, rich melanin hues. Ladies sing the blues, black bodies on the news. Whole lot to lose, much more to prove. Just some thought for your food, hard to digest. So I digress like a lack of progress in the projects. Trust the process, elevate your conscious. Trust, job, bless.
Buffalo soldier, dreadlock rasta, return of Messiah, smoke get higher, 13th letter, beast never let up, stay with the get up, fall but you get up.
America under George Washington did it. Africa with 400 million black people can do it. If you cannot do it, if you are not prepared to do it, then you
I sparked the blunt before I wrote this, unsure how I approach it. I'm coughing up a lung like I got COVID, gas potent. Snapping on the track like poetry, words spoken. I've been in my feelings trying to find a state to cope in.
Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another is a leadership that will enslave. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave. They gave leadership to our forebears and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own.
Tendai Wadi. Garvey lives. Mosiah lives. Tendai Wadi, sisters and brothers, giving thanks and praises to Maranya Kusika. For those who don't know, the word sounds Tendai Wadi, means be thankful unto the Creator. I want to give thanks and praises to you, sisters and brothers, for joining us for another Mosiah month observance event. And this is a very special one, sisters and brothers. You're not going to want to miss this one, sisters and brothers. We give thanks and praises for the Mosiah season. 25 years, sisters and brothers, observing Mosiah in the community, Africa, UK, which has now gone global. We no longer call the 8th month of the year by another name. We call it Mosiah because we as free African people reclaim time, space, and circumstance. If you don't know, sisters and brothers, my name is Brother Olatunji from the Alkebu-Lan Revivalist Movement, hosting this a very important Mosiah session this evening, sisters and brothers. As it's Mosiah, we want to give thanks and praises for all of you who've been here with us this month, from our opening ceremony on the 6th of Mosiah through to our every Sabbath weekly strongly shows on galaxytheory.net every Monday evening, Kuchugulia Day evening, between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. and to our Mosiah in the Motherland session, which happened last Yemeni Day, Babylon, Saturday, the 19th of this month, and through to our 100 years celebrating the centenary of the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey, which happened on the 24th, just a few days ago, sisters and brothers. Today, a very special event, because ever since we established Mosiah Month, sisters and brothers, 25 years ago, we've always ensured we have a session that we informally titled Sister Power, when we focused on and highlighted and extemporized on the power of the sisters in the, not only in the Garvey movement, but in the liberation movement generally. And tonight is no different, and this one is going to be a very special one. I'm sure you're going to agree, sisters and brothers. But this is Mosiah Month, and our guest is in the backstage, ready and raring to go. We're going to bring her forward shortly, sisters and brothers. But before we do that, let's do with some Mosiah formalities, some Mosiah rituals, some Mosiah customs that we do every event, sisters and brothers. We did establish 25 years ago, to accompany the Mosiah season, the Mosiah daily affirmations, which is where we've compiled an affirmation for every day of the 31 days of the month of Mosiah. The word sounds of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And we accompany that with a commentary from our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandeka. So without further ado, sisters and brothers, I'm going to go into the affirmation for today, which is day 27. And the affirmation is entitled, sisters and brothers, let no one inoculate you. And the prophet says, let no one inoculate you with the evil doctrine to suit his or her own convenience. Charity begins at home. So to thine own self be true, and thou can't then be false to no one. For God and nature made of what we are, and out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law. Let God and the sky be our limits, and eternity our measurements. There is no height to which you cannot climb with the active intelligence of your own mind. Minds create, and as much as we desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own minds. And today, being scientifically the weaker race, you treat others only as they treat you. But in your home and everywhere possible, you must teach the higher developments of your science to your children, and make sure we have a race of scientists par excellence, for in religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. And we say, such is the wisdom of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. We say, hail to the proud of word, hail to the proud of word, hail to the power of the word. Sisters and brothers, give Him thanks and praises. And we go straight in now to our commentary from our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandeka, to accompany the word sound and information from our prophet. And Brother Leader Bandeka says, Mukuru, our great ancestors, have left us numerous legacies of magnificence, which still baffle and awe-inspire the world today. They knew no inhibitions, so they imposed no limitations upon themselves in scientific and spiritual possibilities. What faith and genius they displayed remains in our genes today. All we need to do is tap into it. How do we do this? Study the history and traditions that give rise to these accomplishments. Culturally imbibe and reinforce these values and principles in our daily lives through the systems of education, spiritual orientation, socialization, family values, recreation, celebrations, etc. Instill this in our children. Point them to the stars. Where we fail, they will not. Sisters and brothers, we give thanks and praises for the word sounds of Brother Leader Bandeka. We say, hail to the proud of word, hail to the proud of word, hail to the proud of word. Now, we normally do, sisters and brothers, engage in a memory verse as well, because Mosiah is a whole family occasion. So we have a memory verse to accompany the affirmation for each day for our totos, hoping our Princess is going to come through now and come with the memory verse for today, day 27 of the month of Mosiah. In the meantime, sisters and brothers, while we're waiting for that to happen, let me just alert you too. If you've missed any of the sessions online, sisters and brothers, go to YouTube, Alkebu-Lan Way, or Gotwish TV, and all the sessions we've had online, you can see there. I want to let you know as well, our final session for Mosiah this year will be tomorrow evening on Africa Speaks on Galaxy Radio, galaxyafiri.net, and we're dealing ultimately with African sovereignty, something which obviously concerned the efforts of the UNIA ACL in its day. We're looking at through the lens of the situation in Niger and West Africa in general, in the recent spate of coups and political upheavals. And we want to know what the prospects are for African liberation and African sovereignty. That says, don't miss that, sisters and brothers. It's very engaging reasoning tomorrow evening. I'm going to put the details, sisters and brothers, for that in the chat, so you can tune into that tomorrow. That'll be 7 p.m. BST. I believe that'll be 2 p.m. EST, sisters and brothers. So yes, we're gonna be dealing with that tomorrow, and tonight we're gonna go into our session with our sister Sheila Brown. Before that, though, we want to get to the memory verse, so we're gonna see if we can get our princess to log on and come with the memory verse. I'm not sure what's going on, but yeah, we're going to go into that. Let me see if I can get hold of the chat so I can see who's here and who is saying what, sisters and brothers. Can't see it there, but never mind. Aha. And I think we have now our princess is ready to join us. Who's going to do our memory verse. Princess Kianga. Princess Kianga, are you there? Princess Kianga? Right, I can't hear you. I don't know if you're on mute. Tell them, my princess. I can't hear you. Right. The challenges of live broadcasting, sisters and brothers, doesn't always go exactly to plan. Right, princess, can you hear me? Okay. Let me see if I can. There you go, princess. It's all on you. Right, we can't hear you, princess. It's not working out. Okay, no problem, princess. Can you hear me? Not if you can hear me. Live broadcasting, never mind. All right, so we're gonna get our princess to come onto this screen and actually remember us, and so let us do that right now, sisters and brothers. So there you go. Go on, princess. Freedom.
Teremo, there is no humanity before which starts with yourself. Charity begins at home. So first, to thine own self be true, and thou canst not then be false to anyone.
Okay.
There is no humanity before which starts with yourself. Charity begins at home. So first, to thine own self be true, and thou canst not then be false to anyone.
One last time.
There is no humanity before which starts with yourself. Charity begins at home. So first, to thine own self be true, and thou canst not then be false to anyone. Tell them more.
Tell them more. Give thanks and praises for that, Princess Kianga. We give thanks for it. Like I said, Messiah is a whole family occasion. And we are going to go, sisters and brothers, and get moving into our presentation. I say we've got a very special guest. First time, I believe, on our platform. We do hope and pray it won't be the last, sisters and brothers. I'm going to bring her forward, but before I do that, let me just give you a bit of background to our sister in case you don't know about our sister Sheila Brown. Sister Sheila D. Brown is a passionate motivator. She takes listeners on an intense journey with her weight loss struggles and triumphs, confronting her own issues with food and spirituality, forced her to address the anxieties and issues she had in her own life. Sheila speaks to women of African descent, helping them to identify and address their own anxieties and issues associated with food and their bodies. Her ebook, Divinity Soup, an ancestor-inspired recipe starring collard greens, is the first in a line of recipe books focusing on the connection between healthy food and spirituality. In addition to cooking and writing, Sheila also enjoys being a mother, lawyer, speaker, health coach, and personal strategic planner. Sheila has consulted with CEOs and executive team to develop a multi-year strategic plans. Today, she uses those skills to empower all African women as daughters of the Most High, develop pathways to divine health, and navigate the threats and opportunities that are present along the way. She helps Black women devise their own personal strategic health plans, coaching them towards lifelong journeys and healing and optimism, physical health by removing negative eating habits and behaviors. Sheila plans to share her journey and motivate other Black women and families to incorporate a plant-based diet into their lives through speaking, workshops, one-on-one intensive group coaching and products. She wants to empower them to take control of their bodies. Our sister Sheila is also a member of the UNIA ACL RC 2020 Woodson Banneker Bay Division, sister and brother. So what I want to do now is bring forward our sister Sheila Brown to you. Sister Sheila, greetings and welcome to our Mosiah Observance event here in Africa, UK.
Ashe King, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored. I have to admit that I have multiple business profiles, and you focus in on the one that deals with my work with women on food.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse your audience and say, what does that have to do with Mother Amy Jacques Garvey? And
well, I was thinking it seems like you're a one-woman Black Cross nurses, really. So in terms of that, because that's a key part of the program. So I know there's a lot more to it, Sister Sheila.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes. Well, to add to that.
Yes, please.
So I am definitely what I refer to as a divine health and divine life strategist that works with sisters and sometimes brothers on food consciousness from an African perspective to help bring awareness to the impact that African women and men have made to our food journey, the struggles that we've had with food in this country, and the deeper meaning behind the food choices that we made during oppression and the ones that we will be needing to make as we continue on in our struggles for freedom and liberation. But the work that I do outside of that as an attorney, as a strategic planner, as a aspiring historian, someone who's completely obsessed with Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, which by default means I'm completely obsessed with the UNIA's history and potential, which by default means I'm absolutely obsessed with the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And so that has led me indirectly from that journey through food, because it was necessary for me to go through that, to lose that 135 pounds of toxic waste and oppressive thoughts so that I could do the divine work that I'm here to do today. In addition to that, I'm learning every single day that everything that I do is somehow linked to the history of the UNIA. So for instance, I also teach emergency preparedness. And one day, just out of curiosity, I did a request for information. And that's kind of my process for trying to delve into what Mother Amy Jacques Garvey and the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey were really dealing with, what it looked like from the perspective of the griot that Mother Amy Jacques Garvey was, and how she left us all these jewels that give us such a deep, powerful inside look at what was happening, not just in the UNIA, but in her husband's life and in the life of her own front row seat to the massive transformation that the entire world was undergoing as a result of the incarnation of the man in this powerful Black August month that was the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the man who arguably could be easily and undisputably defined as the vocal cords of the African race. The man who almost singular-mindedly developed the strategies and the vision and the objectives and the implementation guidelines that would take a people from the scattered and dispersed, confused singularities throughout the world into a more comprehensive confraternity of man and God. And so what's so special about today is that I want to, and if I have the permission of the elders to speak, which is what I would really like to do before I get on my diatribe, may I have permission from my elder to speak on these matters?
You certainly do, sister, my sister Sheila. Permission granted and endorsed.
Thank you. So is this really front row seat, the driver's side and, well, the passenger side for sure, but sometimes the driver's side, front row seat of the internal and external transformations that were happening. I mean, if we could just appreciate for 1 minute, not only was Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, who I would love to speak with you all about today, about her contributions, her deep divine role, her insights, and more importantly, how she was destined for this role. She represents the balance, the divine universal orchestration of darkness and light, of inside and outside, internal, external, of everything that makes the world go round, that we look at, like we could see visually with the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. But the parts of him that we couldn't see, we can almost only see because of the archivist and the visionary and the indisputable leader who really only gets to kind of be seen in a real public way as a result of the chaotic and disturbing events that took place at his arrest in 1925, right? And so it was at that point in history that the world changed for Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, for sure, but literally for every woman of African descent indirectly. And this particular instance of her reminds me of another queen who came centuries before, whose name was Maria Stuart, who we also don't know very much about, but she was the female counterpart, if you will, to the man that represented David Walker, who was the author of David Walker's Appeal.
Right.
Really, if we're completely honest about what role he played in history, was like the spark that set it all off. I mean, the Honorable Frederick Douglass referenced and revered him. And he wrote this poignant piece that reminds me so much of the words of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, where he demanded that both free Africans and enslaved Africans get their life together and stand up against the atrocities that were being waged against them. And for this, he lost his life. But he
Yeah.
also had in the audience of his a woman by the name of Maria Stewart, who was one of the first women, arguably of African descent, to stand before a body of people and speak her mind and say, listen, my brothers, this ain't working for us anymore. You are going to have to stand up and be men. And so, if you could imagine during that time, just like it was when Mother Amy Jacques Garvey did very similar things, it was turn off for some people. For one, it was a woman speaking in a political posture in front of both men and women, and she didn't have flattering things to say about the condition that her people were in and the reality that Black men and women, but Black men as the leaders of this nation, had a bigger role to play.
Yeah.
No matter how uncomfortable it would be in the liberation of African people. And she, as Mother Amy Jacques Garvey, didn't take long to figure out that if you don't, it is us who will bear the stripes.
Mm-hmm.
It is us who will have to also suffer and bear the burdens of the unbelievable disparities in indignities, as Mother Amy Jacques Garvey would refer to it as, that would be heaped upon a weak and defenseless people. And so these two women are very inspirational to me, of course, among others, including Mother Harriet Tubman and Mother Harriet Jacobs, who was the first enslaved woman to write her own biography. And it is because of her that we know about all of the horrors and the indignities and the atrocities that were suffered by women of African descent, not just at the hands of white men, but at the hands of white women.
Women, yes.
And sometimes at the hands of her own people. This very complex burden. And so today, if you will, Brother Heru, allow me to just take us on a little bit of a journey through storytelling, through factual data, through the speeches and writings of Mother Amy Jacques Garvey. As we tell her story, you're really telling the story of the UNIA.
This is it. Can I just ask a question though, based on what you've just said? Can we expect in future then a presentation on Mama Maria Stewart from Sister Sheila Brown?
I'm making no promises, but it's certainly long overdue. I think that my life work right now, along with the other things that I'm doing, seems to be largely focused around Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey, because she leaves so much to be addressed. I mean, she's like really one of the key figures. Honestly, if I had my way, the entire world would be forced and probably would agree that she is what I refer to as the most significant woman of the 20th century.
An argument here, my sister. If it's not part of your presentation, let me just clarify, because I think what you said is so true and so accurate. But I think for a lot of us, it's not something we're aware of. So what was your introduction to the life and the work and the impact of Queen Mama Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey? If it's not part of your presentation, because it seems like you can't really tell the story of the movement without Queen Mama Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, but many people try to.
Yeah.
So
leave her out of it. In fact.
So what was your introduction to her, and what was the impact on you when you began to realize and understand? Well, how do we not know this as a race?
You know, that question always sends me into a deep place in my soul, and it kind of like shakes me, because I sometimes say to myself, wait, how do we get here again? Like, why is this woman occupying so much of my time, right? And so the truth of the matter is, I took a course on Pan-Africanism, revolutionary Pan-Africanism, about 4 or 5 years ago now, with Dr. Umar Johnson. I was so very curious to understand or overstand more about the topic. And even before that, part of that curiosity was when I was 17, I was introduced to the teachings of Dr. Malachi York. I fell head in. I mean, you talk about Dr. York's community. I was in it at 18, everything that was required of me and anything that was asked of me, no questions asked. I'm doing it because I believe so wholeheartedly in the teachings of Dr. Malachi York as they were taught at that time. And so one of the things I always remembered was Doc saying very briefly something about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And it kind of just settled into me. I didn't hear much else about it, but it just stuck with me. And it was something so compassionate about how he described how they killed that man. He was so upset about the way the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey died, and that he died in a way that killed the spirit. And I think he was teaching on character assassination at the time, ironically, and how the new form of Messiah destruction in our communities would be through character assassination. And so he described how they literally snatched the soul out of that king with their disparaging, hateful words, right? Among other things. Of course, there was a buildup, but having to read about his own death in the words of his own enemies was enough to just, with all that he had been through, just tear him from his body. It was so devastating to hear those words in that way from one of his chief enemies. So that stayed with me over the years. And then as I started to, and I left the nation about 10 years after that. I ran some of Dr. York's stores, ran his businesses. I was, down at Tamaray every 2 weeks, sitting at his feet, hearing these teachings. So I had a deep appreciation for the kind of kingship. And ironically, I also saw a lot of parallels later on when I got to the point of your question about when I started to hear about this Marcus Mosiah Garvey and Pan-Africanism, and was opening my heart to the possibility of this might be something for me, that I took the course. And of course, I took the course very seriously to the point where I was the top student in the class. And I, as a result of that, for the final project, got to choose my ancestor. And it was no question for me that I was going to choose Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey. Not even knowing really why, except for the fact that she was just the most obvious person to choose, right? Out of everybody else that we discussed, Henry McNeil Turner, of course, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, all these other prolific, Pan-Africanists, everybody. It was no question for me that I needed to know more about who this woman, Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, is. And so after doing just a little research, because it was not that much available, but we had Garvey and Garveyism as one of our texts. We had the philosophies and opinions on the course, right? We had all of these little things. And I was always particularly interested in some of the statements that she was making. And I would confide in a few people. I was like, did you hear what she said in Garvey and Garveyism? Like, and everything she just said, which is really either resonate with me or just hurt my soul in such a way. But I saw so much of my own experiences in some of her experiences. And I think a larger part of it had to be with the kind of sacrifice that revolutionaries of the level of Dr. Malachi York and, of course, of her husband, what they require of their followers, but more so what is required of the women. The level of sacrifice and sometimes the overreaching that we must eat as women, that we must chew on in our own spirit so as to not bring destruction, sometimes, just to be honest, on the nation itself, because we're so married to liberation that the internal struggles that we see and experience as wives, as daughters, as sisters, as aspiring, leaders in these organizations. I had no friends, and I was one of the key people in the organization. When you hear the name All Eyes on Egypt, which was which is the name that all of the stores are known by now, that's Sheila Brown's name. That is a product of my divine imagination. But no one would know that except for the people who decided to use that name and the people who were in my inner circle, right?
Yeah.
And so part of my experience in the Nuwapian Nation was to be as invisible as possible and to never allow myself to aspire to want people to know what I'm contributing to the organization. And I know that doesn't make much sense, but it was a reality. And I saw so much of that experience in Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, who oftentimes removed herself and her significance to the nation so that she could remain a tool that didn't take away from anything that her husband was doing, even though it was so much more that she brought to the table than just being the confidant and wife. And if you ask most people, oh, who is Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey? They will say, oh, you mean the wife of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey? Then the added insult is, which one though? Wasn't she the second one? There's all of these, things. And partly it's her fault. Partly it's her responsibility because she did her best to remain small and insignificant because it was her objective to make sure that the world knew her husband's work.
Yeah.
And there was nothing wrong with that, except for the fact that now people don't do the right thing by acknowledging that just about everything you know good about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the work that she contributed when he was incapacitated, when he was incarcerated, and the work that she did subsequent to that, not just to maintain that man's life, to make sure that he had his needs met while incarcerated, that it was his voice that was being conveyed to the world while he was incarcerated, and that even after his death, the decades of work that she continued to do to make sure his name never died. People to this day are quoting this woman when they say that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was, when they talk about the fact that he was, which I'm referring to is in chapter 2 of Garvey and Garveyism, where she's giving us this profound insight about how the UNIA was developed in the mind first of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And how he asks these very important questions that to this day still baffle the world. Where he said, where were the black man's ships to carry his minerals and produce to make him economically secure? White companies took black men's cargo and carried them as passengers only when it was suited to their convenience. Their attitude was, if you don't like it, then swim the oceans or get your own ships. He said, where were the black men's factories to provide employment but for their people? And why should black men always walk hat in hand, begging white men for their jobs? It is because the black man is not economically self-reliant that he is kicked around and gets the refuse. This is why he is treated with contempt and sometimes with pity, but never with respect as a race. Right? These are the types of poignant, profound, prolific inner thoughts of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey that we only know because of the archivist, the visionary, the author, and so much more that is Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey. And so,
and this is why when we honored and celebrated the centenary of Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, we have to give pride of place to Mama Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, because were it not for her, would we have it? But I notice this, what I want to do is I want to step back and give you the floor and let you deal with it, because like you said, you've set the tone nicely that, sisters and brothers, if you didn't know, you're going to find out today the power and the whirlwind that is Mama Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey. She did a lot of hard work, very instrumental, but I don't think a lot of us know the half of it, I would say, about what this Queen Mama has done for us. And I think Sister Sheila set the tone, but now she's going to go in and let you all know, sisters and brothers, about, as we're calling today, our women and what they think. The life and legacy of Mama Amy Jacques Euphemia Garvey, presented by our sister Sheila Brown. Sister Sheila, take it. I'm going to sit back. I'm just going to soak it in. And we'll come back afterwards and engage our listeners and our viewers and our watchers, etc. So, sis, take it away.
Okay. So let's start this off with a story, because this month is so profound. And whenever we talk about Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey, we're talking about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And whenever we talk about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, we are by default also speaking about his partner and friend and confidant and voice. He was arguably, like I said, the voice of the African race. And that is indisputable. The Honorable Martin Luther King confirmed it. We have all of the organizations that emerged from the UNIA's triumph and failures in response to the injustices that destroyed the work of the UNIA. But on this auspicious month, 136 years ago, something significant happened. There was a beautiful woman who we know as a Jamaican woman, petite, beautiful, gorgeous, industrious, married to a very profound and complex man in Jamaica, who gave birth to the answer to a profound and devastating question for of African descent. And this woman, I'm hearing it. I'm hearing where that's coming from. Do you hear the echo? I think there's some background noise that might be interfering. Do you hear it?
No.
It's gone now. It's gone.
Okay, right. I think there's me.
So this powerful month, particularly on the 17th of this month, 136 years ago, we received the answer to a very pressing question that generations of African people had raised in various tongues in their struggle within the shores of these now known as the United States, in South America and on the Caribbean islands and in Europe. Wherever they were raising their voices in frustration and despair and desperation to the ultimate source to provide a solution to a devastating and oppressive problem of bondage, of slavery, of chattel slavery, of murder, of rape, of hostilities and indignities. For generations, African people were raising this question, were lifting their voices to the heavens to get an answer to this problem. And it came in the form of a child who was born on August the 17th, 1887, to a woman, a beautiful Jamaican petite, intelligent, bright, and industrious woman by the name of Sarah Jane Richards, and to a man who was also intelligent, strong, large, profound, intimidating, brilliant, and very complex by the name of Marcus Garvey. And when these two people came together, Mother Sarah Jane Richards, the wife of Marcus Garvey, produced a child.
Okay.
This 11th child would be only one of two survivors of this family. This couple, this divine couple, who balanced each other out, with one being full of compassion and the other being full of hard life lessons that would come together genetically to produce this amazing answer to a solution for African people. So serious. His name would reflect the fact that both of them could see that this was the answer to a problem, a leader for a time such as this, a time for a people who, coming out of bondage, still found themselves chained to a system that kept them bound politically, economically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, and socially, among other forms of discipline. And so the mother, knowing that this would be the one male child to survive, and the father recognizing that the stars themselves dictated that this would be a profound leader, came to a negotiation about what his name should be. For the father knew that he was definitely going to be after his own makings and decided that his name should be Marcus. But the mother knew that there was something more profoundly spiritual, significant, and almost prophetically biblical, if you will, about this man, that she knew he was going to be like a Moses to his people. So they compromised and determined that the child would be Marcus Moses Garvey. But instead of Moses, it would be Mosiah. This was the gift of Sarah Jane Richards and Marcus Garvey to the entire world of African people, and subsequently to the Asian race, who also benefited and obtained their own freedom as a result of observing the works, the lyrical teachings, the voice, and the powerful vision of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And so this young man, clinging to his mother at times, but intrigued by the intellectual prowess of his father, combing through the books in his father's library, but also mystified by the almost aloofness of his father and the sternness of his father and this inability to attach emotionally to him, but which was balanced by a mother who adored and doted and made sure that every desire and need that she could afford to provide for him would be met. Whether that were sweet candy or whether that was the shoes and the tuition that he needed for schooling. And so this profound union produced a young boy who was determined to be the most profound, the smartest, the strongest, and the most competitive among his peers. And as this young man started to realize what type of world he found himself born into, and finding himself puzzled by the injustices that he had already begun to see as just a little boy who could no longer go to school because of his father's financial dealings, but was sent to being prepared to go into apprenticeship with a family member and uncle. But when he was just 8 years old and was starting to discover what role he was going to play, the questions that he was sent here to provide an answer for, the problem that he was sent here to solve. Also, at that time, the ancestors were surrounding the room of a woman and a man, a couple whose names were George Samuel Jacques and his wife Charlotte, who was at this very time pushing out the second half to the formula, the equation that would be the supplement to the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And so as Mama Charlotte pushed and pushed her first child, who was a girl that they named Amy Euphemia Jacques after her father's surname, was born into the world. And I can only imagine with my divine imagination that when George Samuel Jacques picked up his precious daughter, probably wishing that it had been a boy. He was so proud at the beauty that he had created nonetheless. And I would imagine that he must have too saw something so profound in this child that he decided that despite the fact that she was a girl, she would be equipped to answer any man, to protect herself, and to move intelligently in the world, and to be able to interpret everything that was happening around her. And so as this beautiful young lady grew, with her grew the expectation that she would be able to not only interpret and articulate world events that her father placed upon her her responsibilities, the intentional responsibility of reading newspapers from around the world and explaining to him what the articles that she was reading meant, to provide a political analysis of everything that her eyes was reading. And so to be able to test her, he would challenge her and ask her questions and provoke deep thought in her mind. And he would send her to schools, and he would get her to a level of education that was quite uncommon for her age. And Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey spoke about her upbringing for herself as well. And the fact that even though she was a girl, that she was being taught things that her father believed was necessary. How to shoot a gun, for instance. How to hold herself in a room full of men and intellectuals. How to stand and speak up for herself. All the while planning for her to go to school and to become a nurse. And so she learned these very powerful lessons of femininity. She learned, although she did not have an ear for music, she learned to play the piano, but she negotiated because that was one of the gifts of her skill set that the ancestors intended for her to have. And she decided to negotiate with her father so that she could learn typing and shorthand. And as you all know, those were two of the most important skills that she brought to the UNIA, which was so instrumental that not only do we have more than 2 to 3 profound books, but we have over 226 writings in the form of articles, short stories, poems, and even speeches that she would give later on behalf of not just her husband, but on behalf of her race. And so this young girl with a high school education, which was far exceeding the expectations of many girls in Jamaica for that effort, allowed her to be positioned to take on an opportunity that was just as rare for women of her age, stature, and race. And that came in the form of an opportunity to work at a law firm, which her father absolutely categorically refused outright. Over his dead body, he said, "Will my beautiful, precious daughter ever work in a law firm surrounded by a bunch of groping, dirty, filthy mouthed men?" But the ancestors sent Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey here to fulfill a sacred purpose, a purpose that required a legal mind, a purpose that will require her to use her skills in administration and her deep analytical abilities to address some of the grave issues that would face the man that would one day become her husband. And so when the opportunity presented itself and the ancestor, who is her father, refused it, the divine removed him from the planet. They took his life because his job had been fulfilled. He had done what he could do and what he was sent here to do, to prepare his daughter, this divine light, this other half of a divine equation, the solution to a big problem in the world. He had done the task. And now, to prevent him from becoming an obstacle to the work that she would have to do, and the man who would be replacing him as the key authority in her life, he had to be removed. And so George Samuel Jacques, God bless his soul, became an ancestor. The opportunity then presented itself once again. The family attorney, went to the mother, Charlotte, and said, "You've got something special here. And you need to have your husband's estate administered. Why not let Amy Euphemia Jacques come and work at the law firm? She will handle the administrations of the estate. She will learn these vital skills. She will make some money, and she will assist me in the administration." See, she was destined for greatness. And so Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey stepped into her father's shoes and did the persuasive work for her mother and said, "Mama, I will go. I'll do it. Don't worry. It'll be fine." And she worked at that law firm. She worked at that law firm so studiously, so expeditiously, and so thoroughly that she mastered every single skill set that needed to be mastered. She knew all of the insurance regulations. She knew, most importantly, how to run an organization from beginning to end, how to put into place controls about how to manage the paperwork and leave paper trails, how to handle cash, how to account for that which needs to be accounted for, and to give an accounting when it was necessary. And so after 3 or 4 years of working in this law firm, after a childhood full of political analysis, full of rigor, discipline, and development of a leader, Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey looked around her and decided that the destiny of her life was taking her to another place, something outside of Jamaica. Jamaica had grown too small for her. There was something calling her, something pulling. And so in 1917, she found herself on a ship headed to Harlem, the same year that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey found himself stepping foot in Harlem. And as destiny and fate would have it, the two of them would have an encounter one day. And both being from Jamaica and both being politically astute, met because of his oratory and her coming to one of his events and meeting him in person and giving him her thoughts about his performance that night, and explaining to him that while he had a persuasion about him, the aims and the objectives of the organization still left much to question in her mind. And so after drilling and drilling and drilling him and getting very important answers to questions that would enable her to embody the principles of the UNIA. See, she was more than an observer. She was a thinker. You had to prove to Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey that what you were saying mattered, that it made sense, that it was going somewhere, that it had strategic objectives and implementations that would make a difference for their people. And so the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, clearly being impressed with the line of questioning, decided that it would be important for her to come and, to come and meet with him in the office where he would have more time to explain his objectives for the UNIA and to show her and give her a tour of the office. And this fateful event led her on the journey that would be one of the most profound journeys of her life, and without her which may not have turned out as favorably as it did. Because Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey was the divine complement to the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey in every single way. She was born for the job. She had the temperament for the job, not just for the job of leadership, which you all would like to just simply refer to as a secretary and wife, but she was a powerful woman with a powerful set of skills. that were honed in her by way of divine intervention. And if you think I'm making this up, just read it for yourself. She talks about the fact that she was divinely prepared to do this work. It was her who said that the ancestors took her father out of divine intervention. She knew who she was. But now it's time for us to know who she was and to put some respect and honor on her name, because she was so instrumental in the development and the undertakings of the UNIA and the survivability of her husband and his sanity and peace of mind, and in ultimately his legacy. Because without her and her reproductive willingness to give him life outside of himself, we would not have the beautiful seed that is now continuing the legacy genetically of the Garveys. So we owe this woman an undertaking. And so the gift of oratory, the gift of organization, the gift of legal and political analysis, the gift of compassion, the gift of advocacy, the gift of cash handling, the gift of organizational development, the gift of legal consulting, the gift of writing, the gift of analysis, the gift of articulation could all be found in one body. And that was the body that you refer to as Amy Jacques Garvey. So we're going to put some respect on this woman's name for once and for all, because it is due to her. One of the first things, for example, that she did for the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey that had implications then and have just as much ramification today, and that every woman and man should pay attention to, the role of a soulmate, the one who was sent here to help you. She will come with gifts. She will come with skills. And she will oftentimes be undervalued and appreciated just because she puts her mind to do the work and does so graciously, sometimes without pay, and sometimes without gratitude, and oftentimes without the recognition she deserves, but always the victim of the animosity, jealousy, and resentment from those who were being abusive against the leader and abusive against the people whose money, resources, and hope they were entrusted to. See, she was a divine soldier, and she came with a sword in one hand and a pen in the other. And we should put some respect on her name because of this. Because one of the first things that she observed when the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey brought her into the headquarters and showed her the mailroom and pointed out tons and tons of letters that had yet to even be opened. How many weeks? How many months? What was in them? This is unacceptable. Were responses required? Were there any legal attachments? Were there checks with expiration dates? Were there accusations? Were there modes of information that needed to be addressed within a period of time? This was unacceptable to a woman who had worked in a law office where time is money. And time could be the difference between prison and the loss of property and freedom. So this was a very powerful woman that y'all take for granted. Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey was demystified when she saw that office was full of havoc. And he said, Amy, I go for weeks out of town as I'm raising money and doing lectures. I don't have the time, and I don't have the people around me who possess the skill set and the know-how and sometimes even the integrity, sis, to help me manage this system. And so she decided she would volunteer and she would implement what she refers to in chapter 3 of Garvey and Garveyism as the system. And she referred to it as the system because what she was talking about was something that would be put in place operationally that had to be adhered to from everyone, from the person who was considered the mail clerk, who she made sure got bonded, up to the highest executive who would be the last person to put their signature and stamp on a check or a stock certificate. Everybody had to fall into compliance with this system. And so you can imagine that it was quite difficult for some people in that office to contend with a new line of thinking and operation. And who was she coming in here to tell us how to do this? And it was especially problematic for those who were there at the behest of Edwin Kilroe, the Assistant Attorney General, who sent in his operatives to infiltrate, to create and sabotage the organization, and to spy and to steal. It was especially problematic for those unscrupulous individuals who were just evil and opportunistic, who found every opportunity to put away a little bit of money for themselves with every first or third check that came in that couldn't possibly be accounted for. Oh, it all came to a complete stop because Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey, with a pen in one hand and a sword in the other, put an end to it. So much so that this system, this chain of custody for the attorneys in the room and internal controls for the accountants in the room was so thorough. It had so many different moving parts, and everybody had checks and balances that they had to answer to. And guess what? The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was so in love with this system, and quiet is kept with the person who put the system into place, because how could you not be? The answer to a problem, a grave problem of theft and lack of integrity had finally come. See, he was beginning to recognize who she was to him. The solution to a very problematic equation had finally arrived in the form of Amy Jacques Garvey. And he was going to take full advantage of it. And so Queen Mother said, the more I volunteered, the more he asked. And eventually, he asked her to become his personal secretary, but not before she finally caught the culprit who had gotten away for months with stealing UNIA funds. Turns out that this man was an operative for the then, at that time, government agency that would now become the CIA, or as I refer to and coined the term, the Alphabet Boys. And so once it became aware to her, after she was doing the analysis, because of course the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey said, shoot, well, you put the system in place, and I know you made it so that I would be the person who would have the final look through, but would you mind taking on that task for me? Of course, King. So she ended up doing the final review of all of this and quickly found a discrepancy. And when she found who was responsible for the discrepancy, she went walking into that office, ponytail flying behind her, and said, "Excuse me, sir. I noticed that there was a problem with your accounting here. Would you please explain to me where this $500 is supposed to be?" Or whatever the amount was. And that man was so irate. You know what he did? He tried to throw her down the stairs. She quickly and abruptly went to the board, the executive team, and reported him. And they resolved the issue. And people knew, oh, we better not play with this Amy Jacques Garvey. And that was just one of the intriguing contributions that she made, oftentimes overlooked, but was so important that it actually became his prominent legal defense when he went before the federal judges, Judge Mack, as he was referred to, another operative of the agencies that were conniving against the powers of the UNIA. Y'all know the UNIA is so powerful. Because of the UNIA, Black people who didn't support the UNIA got appointments as judges and positions in government and all kinds of things. See, there were some negatives that came along in the positives. While, yes, the UNIA was absolutely responsible in teaching the Negro to not rely on the sweet-sounding words of so-called leaders of the time who were just really opportunists, who to not rely on other races who they were eventually competing with for the same resources, to be honest, in their integrity, whether they positioned themselves as part of the communist organizations or laborers. He taught our people that you form your own labor groups. How can you expect to be at the forefront of priorities for labor groups that were established by Italians and Polish and people who were poor and white, but who hated you more than rich whites? How can you expect to have a fair play in that kind of a labor union? Form your own labor unions. And how could you expect for anyone who would teach Negroes to not have their own financial institutions and to rely and hope to get a piece of respect to be able to walk into a white-owned bank and have your deposits there when you went to go get them, or to be able to establish and get loans? How can you expect that to happen in a world set up like this? So UNIA was powerful because it was Negroes who became not only integrated into the system only to destroy the UNIA, but our people were being saved from the hypocritical and dishonest leadership that had become the NAACP, the Niagara movement initially. People whose sole purpose was to simply do three things: to agitate, investigate, annoy, and to probe. That was what W.E.B. Du Bois said specifically the point of the NAACP was. And this is why the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey referred to it as having no program for the liberation of African people. That was the program: to agitate, to investigate, to sabotage, and to disrupt. That's not a program. And so the UNIA has contributed so much, teaching for the first time African people, whether they were from the America of the North, the America of the South, the America of the Central, or if they were on the Caribbean islands or on the continent of Africa or in somewhere else on this globe, or Australia, that they were the descendants of a singular African people, despite the tribalism, despite the religious variations, and that their sole political aspirations, their sole economic liberation, and their sole social and political future rested on one God, one aim, and one destiny. That's what the UNIA represented. And guess who was at the front row seat as all of these developments were taking place? Who was writing and recording and capturing all of the speeches and words of not just her husband to be, but of all of the adversaries. It's all captured. She did it for us in the Garvey and Garveyism. Because of her, we know what people were saying. We know who our enemies are by name, and we know what our solutions were. We know about the profound impact, and there are some jewels that are waiting to be discovered. Did you all know that the UNIA had secret societies? Mother Amy Jacques Garvey knew, and she wrote about it. But because you don't pay attention to the words that this authentic author has to say, the messages that she has left for us in code, right in Garvey and Garveyism, telling us how to pick up the pieces once again and continue in a politically profound way, but you don't want to listen to her because she's a woman. You don't want to listen to her because you have determined that she was a personal secretary and a wife, that she was the sexual bedpiece of the king and only that. You won't even open up the book with an analytical eye and see what jewels she left for you, the solutions to the problems. You know, even the UNIA was responsible for teaching Black people how to be prepared. You know, I told you, even everything that I do seems to be completely in alignment with the the jewels and the lessons left behind for us by Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey and her husband. They taught us how to be prepared for adversity. I can't even claim that. I teach a very powerful course on emergency preparedness that people don't want to listen to. Because y'all don't, even if someone came with the absolute solutions to every single problem, you won't take it because it matters to you what they look like and how well known they are and how likable they are. You haven't changed. That was the same problem that some Negroes had with the solution that the Most High sent to our problem in 1917 when the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey stepped foot in Harlem, New York to set the captives free. For once and for all, you didn't like the way he looked. He didn't even speak according to those who observed him and wrote about it with a thick, heavy foreign accent. He didn't even do that. They purposely tried to make themselves as amenable to the American public. So much so that Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey's needs were continuously snuffed out as a woman and a wife so that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey could save face, because these egotistical, arrogant, hypocritical Negroes operating under the auspices of the NAACP and other organizations would take every opportunity to malign him and to accuse him of just wanting to do one thing: take all the money that he had earned from these stocks and earnings and take it back to Jamaica and save his monkey country. This is what he was dealing with. And this is what she fought so viciously to protect him from when he was in prison and couldn't speak for himself directly to the people. She became his voice piece, his vocal cords. And she was the one who we could arguably and almost indisputably say was, if it's true that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was the vocal cords of African people, then the Honorable Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey could certainly be afforded the title of the vocal cords of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Because who more than anyone, then and now, could take the attribute more so of anyone else than becoming his vocal cords when he was alive and certainly after his death. In fact, it was after his death that she said that all of the pain of being his wife was substituted by the fact that his spirit was guiding her in a more compassionate way than he could have ever been a husband to her. Because the pain of being his wife meant not being second, not even being third, but being fourth in priority when it came to having one's needs met. And the reason he could get away with that with her was not because she was some kind of a frou-frou, silly, fairy little, animal or something, some kind of weakman. It's because she was sent here by the Most High, blessed by the ancestors with the singular task of love of race and love of country as well. And so where many of you ladies would take the position that Amy Ashwood took, you hurt me, you won't pay for it for the rest of your life. Well, arguably no one was as encroached upon, if you will, whose patience was tested more than Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey. So how do you explain the disparities between one woman, who you all like to make her equal in every way, which baffles my mind? How do you take the justification for making her the equal of Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey when one goes and takes all of her anger and outrage for the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, for perceived and sometimes possibly real grievances against her, and prioritize those on the scale of justice that your personal problems with him outweigh the freedom of an entire people on 7 continents, to the point where you would go and cooperate, connive with, and even testify on behalf of the alphabet boys of that time? How dare you? How dare you? And how dare you ask her, oh, you mean the second Amy? What? What is that? How disrespectful of you. Don't limit that woman to her relationship to power when she was power itself. Don't limit her, and don't make her despise her very name, Amy, because he happened to be married to another woman named Amy who became the thorn in the side of both, whose personal vendettas and animosity for her ex-husband, whose name she wouldn't stop using, became so problematic that even on an international scale, she would impersonate as the mother of the Honorable Marcus Garvey Jr. and the Honorable Julius Garvey? Are you kidding me? How does one operate in such level of betrayal? And you all put her on the same pedestal, if you decide to put her on a pedestal at all, as Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey, who gave you Garvey and Garveyism, who gave you Black Power, who gave you the memorandum correlative that went before the United Nations of the time, which was the Geneva Convention, who gave you 226 writings to reference, who constantly provides you with answers to even today's problems. Can you imagine that an article written in 1925 be just as relevant over 100 years ago as it is to this very day, where she's talking about the role of women, not just as mothers and as wives, which was very important to her. Don't you get it twisted. She was no feminist in the way that you all think of feminism. She was not a feminist. Her chief and first priority was race first, nationhood. And she tells us that. And she gives us an accounting of world history and tells you where her husband, your most profound African leader, fit in the scheme of it. To the point where not only in 1925, but in 1927, she wrote an article in the Negro World called Africa Bides Her Time, February 5th, where she literally describes for us how Asia, particularly China, listened like you won't to the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and acted on his advices and literally started the war with the US and won. And now, just like she prophesied, have become the leaders of the world and are ready to and actually subduing Africa. I mean, can we add prophetess to her titles? I think we can, because the prophecies were accurate. So when she talked about Africa bides her time, she wrote it like this. It was a brief article, but what's so profound about the article that she wrote is the fact that she's talking about the war in China. What are we in right now as we speak? Literally unfolding before our eyes, just 100 years. Talk about cycles. So this is why her name can never die and why she is more relevant, arguably, today to us than she was then. Because she, when you read her writings, when you read about the UNIA, you're reading her life. You're reading the diary of a woman. All these profound insights, everything from the mother and father and the circumstances of his birth to the pain and suffering of his death, we know about, not because of the article that took his life away, not because of the secretaries, and it was some profound people in the UNIA, both men and women, but it was Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey who wrote and archived it, who became his voice, but arguably, who stepped into his shoes in 1925 and took the train all across this nation and kept the movement going along with some other very loyal followers at the cost of her mental health and even threats to her body. I mean, if I could just tell you what these loyalites did for the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, can you imagine, for instance, the day that they call on his indictment, they call on his guilt, they say he's guilty and he's going to serve, 5-7 years in prison, maximum security prison in Atlanta. And the UNIA and Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey were so devoted to him, so gangster, if you will. And they were so well connected and so thorough that they did one of the most amazing, this is the most cinematic level scenes of a movie. Okay, so I want you to picture this. The sentence has been handed down, and all they know is that at some point today, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey is going to be escorted onto a train and taken to Atlanta. And if nothing else happens, that man cannot be by himself. So the most loyal members, the most trustworthy members of the UNIA, her closest confidants, the closest confidants of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, they have all stuffed themselves into Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey's apartment in Harlem on 136th Street, I think. And they are anxiously waiting for news from one of the Porter Pullmans who happens to work on the railway. This is a network of Black people who are serious about liberation. They got somebody in the prison who's connected to someone in the jail, who's connected to someone inside of the police station, who's connected to someone in the railway, who's connected to someone in the UNIA. And they've got this network literally established where they are going to make sure that when they put that man, their leader, on this train, that Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey is going to be on there with him. How they're going to do it, they don't know. But Mother Amy is pacing the floor in her apartment. She can't even eat. She's so nervous. She's terrified about what's happening to her husband, what he must be thinking, how must he feeling, what's going to happen to the nation, what will happen to her, where will they get the money from, what about his defense? Her mind is just racing. The chaos around her is so profound that the energy in the room is so intense that she can hardly breathe. They've got her coat right next to the door. They've made some sandwiches for her, and everyone is on edge. Everyone is waiting for the word that the time is now. And that moment comes. Somehow the Pullman porter hears about the train, the time, and the space that they need to be in order to get her on that train. All she knows is that she's thrust out of her meditative coma as she's pacing around, and someone thrusts a bag into her hand. Her coat is thrown over her shoulders. She's pushed out of the door. She's being escorted down the stairs. They don't even have time to take the elevators. And she's running out the front door. A car is waiting for her. They get to the train station, and lo and behold, now someone is pushing her on the train. It just so happens that a signal is given to one of the brothers who's with her. And he gives her a signal that this is the train that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey on, and that they need to get as fast as they can because the train is actually pulling off. You can hear the. So Mother Amy is running as fast as she can. The two brothers that are with her are pushing. They've got her bag in her hand, and all she's got is a coat and a handful of money. And they get to the place where that Pullman porter is. The door swings open. He pushes her onto the train. He pulls her in, and then she takes a seat. She can't imagine that this is actually the train that the Honorable Marcus, the car that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey is on. And suddenly she can see it. She sees his hat. She's sitting there and she's looking and she can see his hat. And somehow he just took a little look behind him and he gave her the biggest smile. He could not believe that his wife did it. That she was on the train with him, and he knew everything was going to be all right, family. It was epic. It was epic, and it showed how orchestrated, how profound, how organized, how serious Black people were about their leader and about freedom. They weren't going to let anything happen to him. They were going to be there for him. They were there to show him that he was not alone. And who better? Who is in the best position to do that than Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey? But so in 1927, she writes this article. And by the way, she ends up getting down to Atlanta with him. Somehow the rules in life was much different back then. And they ended up getting a private car together. And guess what she's doing? She's taking notes like a stenographer. You know, he's dishing out orders, telling her what to do, where to send money, what to do. Tell the person who's going to be holding the fort down for him that this is what he's supposed to do, and giving her instructions about what to tell the people, where she's going to go, setting up an itinerary for her. And you've got to get to Mississippi. You got to get on the train. Oh my God, she is overwhelmed, but she's taking down all the notes to a T, to the point where it's almost like quotes, and she's memorizing this stuff, and she's got it. And then they spend the night together before he is separated from her for several years, before they will ever be in the same car, in the same bed together. But that was the devotion and leader and fearless woman that Queen Mother Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey is. So I want y'all to put some respect on her name. And give that woman her proper respect due, and take her before our daughters. Because you talk about fierce, she wasn't flawless, but she was certainly one of the baddest, most thorough, intelligent, capable, and committed. And we owe this woman a duty of respect, and we owe her honor, and we need to thank her. And we need to study her, because there's still so much more. Because Garvey and Garveyism is one of the most profound pieces of our history that tells us where we were, how we got there, and exactly what's happening to us today. Listen to this. She wrote, "It takes some big physical demonstration to make some Negroes appreciate the necessity for and worthiness of the program of Garveyism. The Chinese war now being waged has done it 10 years ago, when Marcus Garvey started his crusade and informed a warring world that peace could only be brought about when each race group and nation learned to respect the rights of the other. And that as Europeans had claimed Europe as their exclusive possession, so should Asia be for the Asiatics and Africa for the Africans. He was laughed at by some Negroes and dubbed a dangerous man by European land grabbers. Today, the slogan, Asia for the Asiatics, created by a Black man, is the war cry of millions of oppressed Chinese who are letting Europeans know and feel that their home is in Europe, unless they are willing to be governed by Chinese. Hundreds of years of prayers, petitions, and appeals made no impression on the millions of Europeans who were busy exploiting China. But less than 1 year of fighting made them decide to leave China alone to work out her own destiny. Under the caption, "Want it? Fight for it," Mr. Arthur Brisbane of Hearst Publications wrote, "If you want anything in selfish civilization, fight for it." China started fighting, and Europe suddenly becomes polite. China started fighting, and Europe suddenly becomes polite. Asia has learned what Africa is now learning, that what is worth living for is worth dying for. But Africa is not asleep. She is in the organization period, uniting her tribes, linking hand with her scattered children in all parts of the world, educating them for the great task of self-government, and instilling in their minds the love of race and the love of country. It is a great task, but once this task is done, the battle will be comparatively easy. For what human forces could be successful in defeating 400 million well-trained Negroes? They had better sense than to try such an unequal conflict. They will yield just as gracefully as they yielded to the Chinese. Africa will be redeemed, perhaps without the shedding of blood. But in the meantime, Africa bides her time, and from the ocean strand or jungle, mountain, vale, and mead, the swift-word unity will speed on wings of winds and woo her fretful folk into one dream, one heart, one hope. And yet again she'll claim her sacred right to rule herself apart from the alien right. But if once more the pale-faced man shall say, not yet, thou backward race, still thine to pay, I quake to think how swore the arms shall hurl thundering tears at a grasping world when Africa awakes. That was what Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey left for us, that powerful jewel about what the world was going through, looking like and experiencing just 100 years ago. And how relevant is that today? Where once again, Africa is awakening. Have y'all seen Niger? Have y'all seen what's happening across the globe? Even in East Africa, they're forming a federation. We go through this in cycles, and I pray that this time around that the people of the Garvey legacy will be as influential, as serious, and as impactful as the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. But make no mistake about it, family. Black August isn't just about the empowerment of Black people who were serious about liberation, because you could argue that it is also Black Devil August. Because after the convention that took place in Madison Square Garden in New York, where over 30,000 African people self-deciding, self-determining African people came together and voted not only on the colors of the race, the red, the black, and the green, but on the fact that Negroes everywhere would have their own Declaration of Rights, that they would have their own liberation movement and struggle. And as a result of that movement, that powerful movement, guess who was also working in August 1921, August the 10th? W.E.B. Du Bois and other Black devils got together and started writing letters to the government of this nation and others, claiming the slogan that Garvey must go. Garvey must go. Garvey must go. So while Black people across this nation were organizing themselves, putting ships on the sea to move cargo, to create a seamless line of communication and trade between Africa, the Caribbean, the Americas, and Europe, while this profound work was going on and developing, the NAACP was doing their darndest and working their hardest to destroy this powerful legacy. Not because, as we will find out later on, after the death and demise of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, that they differed so greatly in opinion with him, because they actually ended up using the very same values, principles, and speaking points that he always espoused for their own aims. They agreed with what he had to say. They just didn't like him. They didn't like that a dark-skinned Black man that they considered inferior because he was not colored. See, we had some problems back then, family. We had some problems with what Steve Coakley will refer to as the boule. But before the boule, as we know it under the Steve Coakley regime, there was what the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was dealing with as the Pink Tea Set Society. The Blue Vein Society, meaning that they were so light-skinned that you could see their veins. Colored people, family. It was not a liberation movement for the African race. The Negroes who considered themselves colored were so sick in the head that they devised a scheme where just a few of them were qualified. Perhaps the 10% doctrine that we now know is so profoundly pervasive that looks like the Black sororities that singularly hand pick out who's qualified to be in their fraternities and sororities. How sick is that? When you had the option and the opportunity to save and liberate an entire race and develop a system of confraternity among African people. I'm sorry, family, if you see someone in the back, my sweet son has come and he is bringing his mommy some groceries, so don't freak out. But what I am saying to you, family, is that we lost something profound because Black August isn't just for the profound revolutionaries. It's for the Black devils that have always been in our midst, who were seeking to destroy the powerful, open, and secretive work of Booker T. Washington, who was the inspiration for the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey coming here in the first place, who Mother Amy Jacques Garvey admired so deeply, who actually went to visit Tuskegee University. They got to do that as a couple. And what Mother Amy Jacques Garvey said when she got to visit that man's graveside, which was arguably not a natural death, but actually a homicide. But that's another story for another day. You've got to check out the book about the Honorable Booker T. Washington's life and the legacy he left behind as a Pan-Africanist, secretly operating through Tuskegee Institute to protect, support, and proliferate African liberation here and abroad. Okay, so this is so profound, but Mother Amy Jacques Garvey said that man could have been like so many others and said, I got mine, you get yours. But he said, I am here to serve. And she was so moved by that. She was so moved by her meeting with George Washington Carver, who she described as, although so eloquent and intelligent, one of the humblest people I've ever met. See, y'all don't respect this woman, but other people, including Mahatma Gandhi, respected her because they understood who she was and they understood the profound impact that she had. And secretly, every Black man who was in leadership wanted a woman just like her. Someone who was a tigress, who would bite your head off and would hold you to the irons, who would blow your head off if she had the opportunity to protect the legacy and the teachings and the principles of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I could just go on a diatribe, but I just want to make sure somebody's hearing me because I can't see nothing. And I don't know whether y'all are hearing me or not. So can I get some feedback?
Let me yeah, you can get some feedback, Queen. Oh boy, actually no, let me not give you some feedback from me. Let me give you some feedback from the chat actually, because let me just say, and got some of the comments here. I want to big up Sister Nahanda Kofa. She says, our sister Sheila D. Brown, JD, brings information that is so apt and extremely timely right now. I'm thankful and inspired. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Brother Kwaku, what a beautiful spirit. Sister Sheila truly radiates with the love of Papa Garvey and Mama Amy Jacques Garvey. We, the men, must stand up no matter how difficult the situation. I want to go to Brother Kwame Obwaje. Tell you something, brothers and sisters. Mama Amy Jacques Garvey not only was a beautiful African queen, but a defiant African woman too. Let me go down, see if there's any more comments. Brother Kweku also says, Sister Sheila is such a natural, a wonderful storyteller. Her words paint a beautiful, detailed, and often poignant picture of Mama Amy Jacques. Oh, one from Leticia Rodriguez, Pan-African Movement Argentine, International Pan-Africanist, Garvey Cimarron Rastafari. Cheers, brothers, give thanks, Leticia Rodriguez. Brother Imani just simply says, wonderful presentation. Sister Miriam, Ashe, Ashe. The tide is turning. Indeed, it is Sister Miriam. Let's go down again. Kwame Abaje said Booker T. Washington was a great one who inspired Papa Garvey. Indeed, he was. We need to tell that story as well, sisters and brothers. But yes, Sister Sheila, that was words are hard to describe. It was like is a ritual that we engaged in, a spiritual ritual where you brought the spirit of Mama Amy, Euphemia, Jacques Garvey to us here and now, sisters and brothers. Sisters and brothers, watching, did you feel that? Not did you see and hear it, did you feel it? Because it really was so profound. So yeah, it was like what failed me, it really was. So yes, in terms of feedback, Sister Sheila, it really was moving. We're waiting for our spiritual leaders to join us, Brother Bandaka, Sister Kai Wakadar Bandaka to join us. And they're going to give some feedback as well because they've been watching offline and they're going to join us very soon. But yeah, just to quickly say, sisters and brothers, in terms of reading, Sister Sheila did refer to it. Garvey and Garveyism by Mama Amy Jacques Garvey. This one, I don't think is available right now, but Sister Prima Nzinga Sata, Women in the Garvey Movement, sisters and brothers, she was on Sister Shanishi show a couple of days ago. He's reprinting it, and this one has a lot of essays as well from Mama Amy Jacques Euphemia Garvey as well. So yes, I just think, oh, Shekara speaks. Sister Sheila goes deeper into the ritual yet. So give thanks, Brother Shekara. If you're going to jump on as well, feel free to do so as we move towards our close. But yeah, sisters and brothers, if you didn't know about the power, the depth, the beauty, the strength, the majesty, the divinity of Mama Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey before today, you know now. You know now because Sister Sheila has dropped it how it needed to be dropped. We seriously give thanks and praise and say to tender Sister Sheila. And without further ado, I'm going to bring forward our brother Leader Bandaka to give his feedback. I'm sure it's going to be more of the same. So, brother Leader, Tendamwari, brother Leader Bandaka.
Greetings, family.
Tendamwari, brother Olatunji. Sister Sheila, Tendamwari. Garvey lives!
Garvey lives!
Mosiah lives!
Mosiah lives!
Garvey
He lives!
He lives.
Rumbidzo kunamwari ye Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. To the God of Africa be the glory for our Mosiah observance, 31 days of observance and commemoration of the life and legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. This evening we hail and we honor his queen, a prophet, a visionary in her own right, a freedom fighter in her own right, a tigress, as Sister Sheila has told us. We've often called her a lioness, but we will work with tigress as well. Beloved Sister Sheila, you have blessed us so richly this evening. Let me say, and you will probably have detected from the comments that our brother Olatunji, let me just give some honor to him who has worked so hard to deliver this program this evening, and brother Shakara, who we hope will join us before we round up this evening. The hard work that they have put in to making this evening possible, and it really was worth waiting for, my beloved sister, because you gave us such depth and breadth of understanding of the value, how invaluable this wonderful woman that Papa Garvey was blessed to call his soulmate, his queen mother goddess, the woman who walked with him through this journey, who fought alongside him every step of the way, the woman who gave him tender loving care the woman who blessed him with her divine body, gave him love, and produced two children with him and for him. A wonderful, powerful African queen. The woman without whom we probably would not have had half the knowledge and information that we have on the life and legacy of this great prophet and king. And if we did, it would not be from that intimate perspective that she actually gives us. Giving thanks, my sister. You spoke with such love. You spoke, my beloved sister, with such affection. And you captured the prophetic essence and the divine essence of the life of Papa Garvey and Mama Amy in a rhythmic way. It was poetry in motion. Believe me. We weren't only blessed from hearing you, but also from feeling you. You know, you brought such energy to the message that you delivered to us this evening. And what is absolutely clear from your message is that we must give this great African goddess, this great African queen, this empress, the honors that she absolutely deserves. You've taken it on another level for us. We've been honoring Mama Amy Jacques for many years, beloved. But trust me, you have added, you have lifted, you have elevated her for us even higher. You know, and for that we are eternally grateful. We will not forget this night. It is clear that the work that you have been doing on studying the life of Mama Amy Jacques and Papa Garvey, it's clear that the love that you have for both of them are equal and balanced. And you know, the word balance is so important. You used it a few times, and you are quite right when you say that Papa Garvey and Mama Amy balanced each other. Without Mama Amy, Papa Garvey would not be the Papa Garvey we've come to know and love. But as you also say quite rightly, she also was committed to keeping Papa Garvey's name out front, and she was doing that for a reason. But we must not forget that she is a queen in her own right. She is a sovereign leader in her own right, and we must understand her in that context. You talked well about the conflicts that she had with certain individuals within the UNIA offices, and talked about one in the Treasury who was dishonest and was, you know, pilfering funds from the organization, and whom she confronted, and who actually threatened to throw her out of the window, as I recall her stating in Garvey and Garveyism. And she said the next day she came into the office with a gun.
And remember, Daddy had already taught her how to use it.
Oh yeah, oh, absolutely. And she came in with a gun, and she went up to him and she told him, you reminded him of the threat that he made, and told him that when he's ready, you know, he's welcome to attempt to carry out his threat, to throw her out of the window. You know, obviously, as the story goes, he never did try. And when she was going to visit Papa Garvey, when Papa Garvey was incarcerated, she also armed herself because she knew it was quite possible that she could come under attack, and she was not going to shrink and shy away from her adversaries. That gives us strength when we hear those accounts of the life of this great and wonderful woman. And we give thanks and praises again, my beloved sister, for all the work that you have done over the years to make you such a brilliant orator and narrator on this great woman who has given us so much, has left a tremendous legacy for us as Africans to access knowledge, vital knowledge that we need about the black print of Garvey and Garveyism that we need if we're ever going to be a free and self-determining people again. It has to be that black print. I didn't say blueprint.
Yeah.
That print that we revive and we put in place. Now I want to make way for my beautiful African queen to address you, my beloved sister, and address our gathering in this virtual hall of faith and learning. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai, Sister Sheila. So coming to the camera now is Brother Leader's Queen, Sister Kai Wagadao Bandaka. Tendai, Sister Kai.
Tendai Mwari.
Garvey lives.
Garvey lives.
Garvey
lives. Tendai Mwari. Greetings, Sister Sheila. I mean, Brother Leader Bandaka said it all, really. But I just want to say from my heart that I was so moved. You were so captivating. I just, like Brother Leader said, you took on another level. I'm just so thankful for the work that you're doing. It is so profound. It's so sincere. There's a lot of work out there on Papa Garvey and the movement and even the Queens, but I've never heard it in this way, presented in this way. And I've spoken on Amy Jacques Garvey and Amy Ashwood Garvey.
And spoken brilliantly.
But what I heard today, I said to myself, boy, you better don't tell me nothing like we didn't record it or something like that, because I don't want to hear that. You're going to have to do that all over again.
Yeah.
Thank you, beloved. I appreciate hearing that from you. I really do. I have so much respect for the Garveyite women. I'm a baby Garveyite, so I don't even try to compete in terms of, what I need to learn at your feet. But I'm so grateful that you all have provided a platform for me to just share some of the insights that I was able to glean from, I think, partly having my own Black nationalist experience and having some similar pain, that spoke to me when I was reading in between the lines, because you got the words, but she's speaking to us as the women. You got to read in between the Black to see the family guide that she left.
Yeah, definitely. And you did that. Excellent. It was absolutely brilliant. And it takes, as I said, some people write on Papa Garvey, some with not good intentions. And I've heard many people speak on Garvey, and you sort of think, well, why did you decide to even choose Garvey to speak on? You don't like the man. Why do you put that energy into it? Do something you like, But I think it was just, it was absolutely brilliant. A masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece.
Thank you so much. That's encouraging. Very encouraging.
I'm just looking for to hear more and connecting with you more in a deeper, profound way. Your work is absolutely brilliant and it's needed. And I don't know if you've written anything. I missed the beginning. I don't know if you've produced any books.
Only one article so far I've written about her. It's available and it's actually published in the African magazine. It's supposed to be a part of a 3-part series. I've only produced the first part of it, but it's very easy to get. I don't know if you guys are able to do a simple text message, but if you type the word Amy, like if you were typing the text message, just write Amy and then text it to a phone number, and that number is 202-952-6123. 202-952-6123, and you'll get the article sent right to you. Otherwise, I will send the article to Brother Heru and he can share it with you all via email if it's that easy. But I'm now inspired to put out the second part of the article.
Oh, please do. We need it. And we need children's books on it. I mean, she's such an inspiration for me, and I just think for many African women, sometimes that we feel so challenged in what we have to do. We've got to raise our children, we've got to do all the domestic things as well as, be out there and do the work. And sometimes that is not really appreciated. What you did, you just brought that to life. You just made it real and tangible. Say, this woman, she didn't just drop out of sky. She was well read. She was educated. She was a visionary. and she was clear about what her work was. And I don't think she even felt diminished in any way. She wanted to see our people free. Papa Garvey came with a special energy, a special spirit. She recognized that, and she was determined to make sure every African in the world was going to hear and feel his energy and his words. And she was just committed to it. And she used all her talents, all her skills to make sure that that happened. So I am just very inspired by the work that you're doing. And I'm sure many other women, many other sisters that have heard or will hear your message will also be inspired to, just continuing what we have to do,
Thank you so much for those encouraging words, and to hear.
And you know that, sorry sis, don't to cut you. And you know what it also does? It vindicates the lies that are told about Papa Garvey, that somehow his women were not important. He didn't just marry just any and anybody, He didn't just have anybody that was just running behind him. No, she was an intelligent thinking being. She was very clear about what she wanted, what needed to be done. And you can see, anybody to sit down there and put philosophy and opinions together in those days, there wasn't, there's no speed typing, that that big clunky typewriter.
Yeah. And she almost died. She almost died writing the first volume, the volume when he was in prison, because she only had about 2 weeks to get it done. And by the time she finished, she was only 98 pounds, and she almost lost one of her eyes.
Yeah. I know. This is what I'm saying.
It was very painful for her, very painful for her. But to speak to what you just said, if you don't mind, I just want to point out, so anyone who is a fanatic about Garvey and Garveyism, you see how my book is all marked up in yellow.
Yeah.
You look on page 112. This theme that I'm talking to you about this celestial defining about her life and about equally with the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. It's like the balance of the elements. He was so much fire and air. He needed the air element because he was so vocal. And she was very much earth and water because she needed to flow through him and to also take his insights and plant them deep inside of her soul so she could give it back to us in the form of the fruit of Garvey and Garveyism and other writings. But she really believed that she was celestially picked for this work when she wrote on the third paragraph. She said, "I will digress to explain how my legal training came about, which fitted me to serve the organization, and how destiny, fate, or a chain of circumstances brought it about." Right? So she's talking about the divine.
That's right. That's right.
Her coming into being.
Yes.
It was not an incident of sex.
Yes.
That's right. And neither was he. The ancestors were so strategically determined to get the formula. Everything about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, from the facial structure of the African to the hair to the size and shape of his eyes to the size and height and width of his body, the strength of his voice, everything about him was strategically designed.
That's
to
right.
The point that they took away 9 children before they were satisfied with the formula.
That's right. Yes. And I was thinking about even though I'm aware of that all along, I was thinking that, there was only 2 left. And I said, if his mother had 9 living, would they have been able to have done what they did with Garvey to make him who he was today? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because when you got to when you have 9 children, you got to stretch yourself across to hold on one moment, sorry. When you have 9 children, you've got, as a parent, you've got to really divide yourself. When you just down to 2, you can give so much more. And Papa Garvey, he came to do a work. He would not, I don't believe, been able to do that with 9 children, 9 brothers and sisters or siblings. He would not have probably been able to meet.
Apparently, the ancestors agreed with you. Yeah, because they could have easily. She tried 11 times with this man to produce life.
Yeah.
11 times she went through that process of pushing out a child. Can you imagine how many people would give it up?
Exactly.
Or just would have thrown themselves over the bridge, like, I'm not able to produce a living child. What's wrong with me? But they somehow just had the tenacity that we got to keep trying. And then the irony, remember the balance? He's
Yes.
the last, and Queen Mother Amy is the first.
Yes, yes.
First child. And she's
Yeah.
not the boy that the father had envisioned.
Exactly.
She's the miracle that
Yeah.
he was going to give everything he would have given to his son.
Yeah. And that's why it had to be that way. It had to be that way, because if there was a boy, then she wouldn't have got all what she got. So it had to be that way.
And we wouldn't have had the balance. And we wouldn't
That's
have had
right.
the balance.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, my stepfather, Michael Hugh George Hall, is from Jamaica. And he came to me when I was 5 years old. And I didn't know that he was my Garvey, but I worshiped that man head to toe. He was like everything to me. I mean, he was so brilliant. He came here with no education, and he was so intellectually in architecture that he built almost all of the prominent buildings in downtown Silver Spring. He, with no education, became one of the chief managers of the construction firm that he got on. He was so powerful. He was so fearless. He would fight with police officers if he felt his integrity. I mean, this man was just incredible. And I was his stepdaughter, and he was so attentive to me. It wasn't my mom. God bless my mom. I love my mom. But it wasn't my mom that took me to get shoes for my feet. My dad, he was so attentive. And all of his sisters were nurses. And when he got me to the point of high school, he decided I had two options. I was either going to be a doctor or a nurse, right? So there was so many similarities, like I could connect.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I can understand the father that she had, and I could also understand the husband, because even though I was not married to Dr. York, and I know Dr. York is a controversial figure to many people, but when I tell you, I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if it's just the fact that when the blueprint or the black print, as your husband indicated, comes down from the ancestors, they come with a formula about how to do things and how to motivate African people. But
that's right.
I started reflecting on Garveyism and what he was doing. Although he did have an international audience, but I started to really reflect on the principles of Garveyism. He did have a red, black, and green flag to honor that. He also espoused that we have our own. It was just so many things now that I reflect on it that he did share in terms of the principles of Garveyism, and I wasn't aware of it because he never openly talked about Garvey to me. I mean, but a lot to people depending on your level and degree of closeness to him.
Yeah,
he was clearly an admirer of Garvey, and then a brother recently gave me a book that I've seen every one of Dr. York's books. I had never known that Dr. York wrote a book about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, front cover face on it. I almost passed out when I saw it. How did I miss that? How did I miss that level of respect and honor that he had? Because it would have changed everything for me so much in my mission. But when I tell you that Mother Amy was singularly handpicked for this job to do what she had to do, and she knew it. And she was so sensitive to her husband's sometimes overreaching of her. Because, you know, for Baba Garvey, if Nathan needed it, he would take it from his own household.
That's right.
And he could only do that with a woman who was just as devoted to love as country as he was, because she was so yielding for him. You know, like my mama wouldn't have had none of that. She wouldn't have had, and none of her girlfriends. My grandmother would have gutted that Negro so fast with a knife from Georgia, because she was one of her sisters from Georgia. They did not play that. You want to take my insurance? What? You know, because that was one of the things when he was in such a tight crunch and he was on the last leg financially of the organization, and he needed to get one of the final papers out before he went to move in London. And he was so desperate for money, he needed this printing machine. And so he went without Mother Amy's permission, wasn't even going to tell her. He went to go take his life insurance policy out. Now, you know what the purpose of life insurance is. It's for the wife and the kids, right? So had it not been for the insurance agency saying, "Excuse me, sir, you will not take this in policy out without informing your wife. You go get her signature first, right? So he came back and said, sign this. And she signed it. And she was like, but can I keep $300? He said, no, I need the printing machine, right? And she yielded for that kind of overreaching. So sometimes I deal with, brothers in the movement who were clearly more educated and more versed in Garveyism than I ever was. And they had took issue with the fact that I said she's the financier of the UNIA, because when he could not get what he needed, he would go into the coffers of her womb, where every woman is entitled to a house, some life insurance in case her king passes away, some cars. And when I was talking about the fact that he was under so much pressure from America, especially after he had been sent back to Jamaica, that he brought 2 young ladies from America to work as secretaries. And this was a real point of contention for Mother Amy, because she was always expected to sacrifice, always expected to go without on the behest of nation. But he knew that he could not treat these girls the way he treated Mother Amy. And so when, things got bad, so he put them in the house. He had his sister managing those 2 girls, and they got vacations, they got a salary, and Mother Amy just had a car. And at one point, he took her car and gave them to them because he wanted to make sure that they never went back home when they got on vacation and talked about how they were being mistreated. And so she was like, don't you think that they can do with some kind of concessions like I have to deal with? And he said, Amy, you think I like what I have to do? You think I like it? And so she was just like, this Negro is out of order. So she had so much animosity. Now, don't tell anybody this. She had so much resentment. We know the name of all of our enemies of the nation. She never mentions these 2 women's names. These women antagonized her like women sometimes do. They antagonized her so bad. Don't ask me how I know this. You just have to read between the lines. But these girls antagonized. She wouldn't even give them the honor of mentioning them by name. They're the only 2 people in the entire book who don't have a name. She just refers to them as them. And one of the reasons she did that is because of the betrayal she felt. So she had some anticipations that her husband, it was very clear to her that there was nothing he wouldn't do to her for nation. So she made room for that. But what she couldn't forgive was when he asked one of the secretaries to take the money when she was expecting Marcus, the oldest son, when she was expecting him. And people were sending her money for the baby, right? Because they knew she ain't had nothing. And so when Baba Marcus, as he would sometimes do with his overreaching, he told his secretary, listen, if a letter is addressed to her, don't give it to her, okay? We need everything. We've got to get A, B, and C done. She'll be all right. When she found out about that, that was the unforgivable, because that was a violation of sisterhood as far as she was concerned. Now, some of you hypocrites out there might be saying, well, didn't she betray Amy Garvey the third? No, she did not. She did what any woman of integrity would do. When you are the personal secretary of the president of the African world, and you see that he is being disrespected and you don't say anything about it. See, that's the problem with Black organizations and with Black leadership sometimes. Everybody around them is a yes man. Dr. York is in jail because he was surrounded by yes men. I know this personally because I've been punished by him for telling him what I thought, because I loved him and I respected him. But there were some dangerous people, you brothers who are in leadership role. There are some dangerous people who will only tell you what you want to hear. And there's 2 things that destroy Black men: their ego and power absolute. You heard the saying, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. If absolute power that makes the people around you get quiet. They don't want to offend you, not because they love you and they think everything you say is great, but because they are afraid of losing position. And that they will tell you your hair is gray when it's blue. They will tell you that you've got 4 legs when you've got 2. And the 1 or 2 women in your life who say, Negro, you are out of order here. We got to fix this. You crush them so fast. Why? Because it's easy to crush them. Because everyone around you is telling you everything you want to hear. This is like your enemy when that is the one who loves you. So Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey was a woman of integrity. And she was a woman loyal to the people.
That's right.
And if someone is doing something to the leader of the government, of the people, of the UNIA, and I see it and I don't say anything, I am a black devil, as Dr. York called me. Because this is about nation and race. This is not about some kind of secret love affair or do you not know Amy Euphemia Jacques Garvey was one of the most beautiful women in the world? She could have any man she wanted, and certainly a man that would worship and kill for her and lay the earth out for her. But she was love of race and love of country, just like him. And so she completely overstood his position because she would do the same thing if she were him. That's why she made room for the overreaching, but she had no room for the sister who would hide her gifts from her. But she ended up buying a cow. And she said, "What you buy a cow for?" And she said, "Because I can't rent a cow." Right? So what happened was the baby that she was giving birth to her gave her a power with him that she never exercised before. And for the first time, she told that brother no, and it almost killed him. Okay, because she was pregnant, and there's a difference between a pregnant woman in the movement and a woman who is single. You could do anything to me, but not the child. That's where we draw the line. And so he wasn't used to the lioness. He was only used to the tigress. The tigress would chew on everybody else's head, but the lioness would chew his head if you're going to infect the cub, right? So she said no to him for the first time because once again, he came asking her to sign her last life piece of financial security away. Not with the baby in my stomach, King, no. She said, no, I'm not doing it. And he almost lost his mind. I'm talking about the relationship between a man and a woman now, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about you and your husband in private moments, right? But it's okay to talk about it now because they're no longer here. And so now that information is instructive for us as a family guide. So that younger brothers in leadership don't make the same mistake. Because part of what was so painful on his deathbed was that he saw, after sacrificing everything in his life that mattered to him, that he really did love, in the end, the people would go on like he and she never existed.
That's right.
And then it was only for her to continue the legacy, and she had to do it with nothing. So it wasn't completely honest when the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey honestly tried to convey to the world, please take care of my wife because I've left her penniless. It wasn't completely accurate when he said that, although he said it from a sincere place. He did leave her with something because as soon as he passed and she had gotten back to Jamaica, actually before he passed away, she had gotten back to Jamaica and had taken taking back possession of the house. One of the first things that she realized is that the lawyers had put out a writ, which is equivalent today to someone taking out a lien on the house. Because one of the times for like a printer, he had put the house on as collateral. And had that debt not being paid, now they wanted to sell the house. And she only got about $250 for it afterwards. And even that was already accounted for. So he did leave her with something. It was debt. And that wasn't the only debt, you know? And so the allies, the people that he had elevated to prominence, the people that he had turned into viable doctors. A lot of people don't realize it, that the UNIA was everything. Even in Congress, they were talking about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And people take it for granted and they kind of joke about, oh, he wasn't no president. Oh, yes, he was a president, a provisional president. He was so president that in my research, very recently, on the House floor, Senator Langford in 1923 was talking to the House of Representatives about the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. See, we kind of take this as, oh, it's a cute little Black history. No, white folk were making moves around
definitely.
UNIA. And that movement was so very serious. There were discussions. I even have a report about an investigation into subversive movements, particularly around communism. And it was solely almost focused on the UNIA, because you couldn't even talk about communism and the threat to the US without talking about the Universal Negro Improvement Association of 1917, 1907. They were it was so impactful. You know, laws and jobs to this very day were established because of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah.
That's right. Yeah.
But let me show you what Senator Langford had to say.
And after that, my sister, I'm going to have to leave.
Sorry.
Yeah, I need to get back to the grands. But yeah, continue.
Let me just share this with you. And I know we're almost out of time, Bob, because I forgot what time we're leaving. So if I know time.
Well, after that, we're going to go to Brother Shakara, who's joined us. Then we're gonna close up. So yeah, go ahead with the reading, sis.
Okay, so this is Senator Langford, and this is what arguably today would be considered a racist man, a man who does not have the best interest of Black people. But the movement that the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey forced these people to really think about their position. Because on the one hand, if you say you don't want a Black race here coexisting, competing for the same resources as you, then what do you want them to do? Disappear? So this is when he was forcing them to think, if Africa exists, and that's where we came from, and you claim Europe as your exclusive possession, and now you're claiming Americas as your exclusive possession, and you don't want us here, as obvious by every war we fought in and come back to be lynched, then let's examine what it is you really want. Because if you don't want us here, we're fine with that. Keep it. Africa can be for the Africans. Doesn't that make sense? And so here, this man, Senator Langford, he said he had given a speech, and there was a newspaper that had published his speech. And this was a speech that many Negroes didn't consider a favorable speech. And he said, I received this letter. He said, I see in the same paper where Hamilton Fish, a representative from New York State, made a speech to a Negro gathering a Sunday or two ago and begged his Negro hearers to honor him by believing that his grandfather long ago invited a Negro to dine with him. He is quoted concerning the Harvard University matter as saying, "This is the opening wedge for every college or university in the North to turn down colored students. President Lau is only catering to the possible white students from the South, and they see more of the colored man down there than they will at Harvard." He said, "I hope Representative Fish is right about this. He's so seldom right. Maybe he is right this time. I received a few days ago a circular letter from Marcus Garvey of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which contained several ideas along the right line, as well as some at variance with my views. Listen to what he says some Negroes advocate. Garvey says, some Negroes, such as the faction of the mulatto W.E.B. Du Bois, believe that the problem will be solved by assimilation and miscegenation. At least they believe that the Black race will become, through through social contact and intercourse so mixed up with the white race as to produce a new type, probably like Du Bois himself, which will in time be the real American. It is for such a contingency that he and his associates are consciously or unconsciously working. And then he says, here is what Garvey says about this impossible idea. We of the Universal Negro Improvement Association believe in a pure black race, just as how all self-respecting whites believe in a pure white race, as far as that can be. Again, Garvey says, we believe that the Negro has at least a social, cultural, and political destiny of his own, and any attempt to make a white man of him is bound to fail in the end. This is the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, President Provisional of the African race. He is speaking to the leadership of a country as country provisional. Okay, so this is not someone to be taken lightly.
That's right.
Take him lightly. When those ships went on the sea, you know, the first thing that they started to do was think to themselves, how in the world did we let this Negro put ships on the sea? We don't want them on the sea, and we definitely don't want them happy on the sea, but we definitely don't want them having their own ships on the sea. And so instantly they started secretly devising a plan to make sure that no other group of people except for the United States itself could ever put ships on the sea for trade. And you know what it's called? The Jones Act. Legislation, policy, economics, and international alliances that would have never been established before were created because of the Negroes who hated the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey running their mouth, thinking that they were going to actually put their own ships on the sea funded by the United States. Do you know that W.E.B. Du Bois went to the NAACP and to the government of the United States and said, hey, I want to make sure that he doesn't get, I agree with you. This is ridiculous and it's dangerous. But I think if you give me the ships and protect me and pay for the ships, that will be the solution. I said, Negro, please go somewhere. This is why he started to get disillusioned, because he really started to take himself seriously. He thought he was creating an allyship when he was just a puppet. To say what they couldn't say and still stand before the League of Nations and claim to be about human rights. So they had him do it themselves. But let me tell you, this is not the only time that the UNIA is talked about in the halls of Congress and the parliaments of Europe. It was serious business back then. And there was only one man who could do the job and one woman who continue it. And that was Mother Amy Jacques Garvey, because even on her sick bed, she was so serious about the task of going before the League of Nations. That was the name I was looking for. That she actually wrote the memorandum correlative, and this time without all of her fluffy and very important political perspectives. She wanted one thing and one thing alone: pure, objective advocacy for people of African descent around the globe.
Thanks for that, Sister Sheila. Let me quickly go to Brother Shakara, who's joined us now, from coming back from honouring the legacy of Queen Mama Claudia Jones. Send them my Brother Shakara.
and our ancestors who were responsible for the legacy of Carnival. Garvey lives.
Garvey lives.
Mosiah lives.
Mosiah lives.
I don't have a whole heap to say, Uncle Otunji. Just to honor Sister Sheila. And say I've had the pleasure of viewing you, in this essence a number of times. And, I just endorse everything that has been said previously, and to let brothers and sisters know, you've got a little taste. Sister Sheila is very capable of bringing Queen Mama Amy Jacques Garvey very much alive. Yeah, and she did. Right, you only got a taste of it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying today, and so there's more to come. And we look forward to it. I think my queen was saying when she was listening to that, the way how you present it is so necessary. Yeah, for us to understand, the nuances and the human element, within this narrative. In the Alkebu-Lan revivalist movement, we say that Garveyism is a sum total of the man, the vision, the planet. Part of that is his family life, and so if we're talking about being holistic, then I do appreciate the way that you're not afraid to confront the difficult issues, in particular on the family front, because that is a part of the fight. That's a part of the liberation fight. Many reasons, for us to learn, in that regard. And finally, I say that a lot of the love that you're getting, when I first saw you, Zed, my sister, I knew that your spirit would harmonize very well with the Alkebu-Lan revivalist movement.
Thank you. I'm so honored, King, that you invited me, especially during Black August, because this is such a high energy month. The ancestors are so prominent in this particular month, and so much is being done in the spirit as well as in the material. So thank you for giving Queen Mother Amy Jacques Garvey her proper space in this time to share her insights and to be honored in the way that we honor so many others, including the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Yes, sister. Much appreciated. And we look forward to more. I am very passionate about the fact that we need to put Queen Mama's legacy and name into proper context. And in fact, I had the honor of doing our libation for a Mosiah opening ceremony a few years ago. And the point that you made in terms of just referring to Queen Mother as the wife of the most eminent Marcus Mosiah Garvey, it doesn't do proper justice. What I'm saying? We need to put some other roles and responsibilities, beside that, in relation to understanding what she actually contributed to the UNIACL, and after the passing of Papa Garvey, all of the work that she did. And just to say, if you talk to any Garveyites, in Jamaica during the 1960s and 70s, to a man and a woman, nearly all of them will tell you they got a lot of their teaching from Queen Mama Amy Jacques Garvey. Open her to the young people, to the people, students in universities, and in particular the Rastafari brethren and sistren, who were being persecuted by the Jamaican government of the time. A lot of them, the maintenance of the name Marcus Garvey in Jamaica is due in significant degree. You often hear Rastafari, and that's a fact, that's true. But a lot of those Rastafari brethren and sistren were learning from Queen Mama.
Sure. And we don't want to diminish the term wife, because make no mistake about it, that was one of the most precious titles to her.
And she, her writing, there's no doubt about the fact that how considered the wife role, so I totally harmonize with what you just said. So I would not seek to diminish that role either.
You're right. Yes, definitely. It's a very precious role to her.
Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing and hearing more from you.
Indeed.
Thank you, beloved.
And you give thanks and praise to Brother Shakra.
May I just say one thing?
Brother Leader, well, I was going to you for closing words anyway, so go ahead.
All right, Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.
Just wanted to say, in respect of Mama Amy Ashwood, that notwithstanding the challenges of her relationship with Papa Garvey and the demise of their marriage, we in the Alkebu-Lan revivalist movement continue to honor Mama Amy Ashwood Garvey, who herself was a warrior queen in her own right. And one of the things that we learn from our studies of these great warrior kings and queens was one of the things that we talked about in the last Mosiah session that we had, was that that Papa Garvey, the greatness of Papa Garvey was that he was human and had his imperfections. He was fallible. and that he transcended all of that to project himself on a world stage in such a powerful way and to affect the lives of African people globally in the powerful manner that he did, and to lift us. I mean, Baba Tony Martin, the foremost scholar on the life and legacy of Papa Garvey, who was appointed as the official historian of the UNIACL. Yes, author of that great book, Race First, tells us that when Papa Garvey came and when Papa Garvey began to emerge on the world stage, that we were at that time as African people, we were actually on the verge of extinction, or we're going to be ushered back into slavery. And he said Papa Garvey turned all of that around. Yeah. And so that he was able to rise above his imperfections in order to be the leader, the world leader that he was, to impact our lives in the way that he did. But one of the things that we learn is that all of these great ones were the products of their time. And that was a very critical time for African people. We had recently come out of this awful system of chattel slavery. And there was so much about the lives of these great people that was so challenging that it reflected in their characters. And so that's one of the things that we need to understand about the legacy of a Papa Garvey, the legacy of a Amy Ashwood Garvey, the legacy of a Amy Jacques Garvey, that they were indeed a product of their times. So I just wanted to put that that out there. Mama Amy Ashwood Garvey is worthy of honor in her own right, notwithstanding maybe, you know, the errors that may have manifested in her relationship with Papa Garvey. Asheo, we give thanks again, Sister Sheila, for the tremendous contribution that you have made this evening to our knowledge and understanding of Papa Garvey, the legacy of Papa Garvey, and the legacy of Mama Amy Jacques Garvey as well. To do it in such a beautiful way in which you've done it, and as Brother Shakara said, to bring her spirit and her character, her personality alive in the way that you did this evening, so that we kind of felt that we were in her presence. We were not talking about her in the past. We kind of felt that she was present and here with us. What you engaged us in is a song of joy and a dance of love with the legacy of Garvey and Garveyism. We give thanks for that. What you have done is given us a deeper insight into the Black print, a deeper understanding of the Black print and the human dynamics that lie behind that, the issues of relationships and how challenging they can be within the context of working and building a liberation movement for our people. All of that is relevant and extremely important. And may the Creator, Mwari Nyakusika, God the Creator of the universe, our great ancestors, continue to bless you richly in mind and in spirit, so you can continue to teach in the way that you teach, to preach in the way that you preach, and to continue to enrich our people in knowledge and in their understanding. Give thanks and praises, brothers and sisters. We are... Go ahead, my sister. I can see you have.
I am getting a download, and I will not be at peace if I don't ask, at the very least. Mother Amy Garvey has a very powerful message for the family, and it was another article that she wrote in 1925 that I alluded to. It's so relevant and it's so pertinent, And I think it would be happy for her soul if she can say that part, because it aligns exactly with what you just said about women in the movement and about our role as leaders. So if I may request permission to just make this final statement on her behalf, I would appreciate it. And if not, maybe another time. It's up to you.
Sister Sheila, no, please go ahead. Go ahead. Let's appease the spirit. So go ahead, sis.
Okay. This is the final thing that I have a message to deliver.
Okay.
The exigencies of this present age require that women take their places beside their men. White women are rallying all their forces and uniting regardless of national boundaries to save their race from destruction and preserve its ideals for posterity. White men, they have begun to realize that as women are the backbone of the whole, so can they, by their economic experience and their aptitude for details, participate effectively in guiding the destiny of nation and race. No line of endeavor remains closed for long to the modern woman. She agitates for equal opportunities and gets them. She makes good on the job and gains the respect of men who heretofore opposed her. She prefers to be a breadwinner than a half-starved wife at home. She is not afraid of hard work. And by being independent, she gets more out of the present-day husband than her grandmother did in the good old days. The women of the East, both yellow and black, are slowly but surely imitating the women of the Western world. And as the white women are bolstering up a decaying white civilization, even so, women of the darker races are sallying forth to help their men establish a civilization according to their own standards and to strive for world leadership. Women of all climes and races have as great a part to play in the development of their particular group as the men. Now, some readers may not agree with us on this issue, but do they not want the minds of their children, the future men and women? Even before birth, a woman can so direct her thoughts and conduct as to bring into the world either a genius or an idiot. Imagine the early years of contact between mother and child when she directs his form of speech and is responsible for his conduct and deportment. Many a man has risen from the depths of poverty and obscurity and made his mark in life due to the advices and counsels of a good mother whose influence guided his decision throughout his life. Women, therefore, are extending this holy influence outside of the realm of the home, softening the ills of the world by their gracious and kindly contact. Now, some men may argue that the home will become broken up and women will become coarse and lose their gentle appeal. We do not think so, because everything can be done with moderation. The doll baby type of woman is a thing of the past. The wide awake woman is forging ahead, prepared for all emergencies and ready to answer any call, even if it be to face the cannons on the battlefield. New York has a woman Secretary of State. 2 states have women governors, and we would not be surprised if within the next 10 years a woman graces the White House in Washington, D.C. Women are also filling diplomatic positions, and from time immemorial, women have been used as spies to get information for their country. Now, white women, they have greater opportunity to display their ability because of the standing of both races. And due to the fact that black men are less appreciative of their women than white men, the former will more readily sing the praises of white women than their own. Yet who is more deserving of admiration than the black woman? She who has borne the rigors of slavery, the deprivations consequent on a pauperized race, and the indignities heaped upon a weak and defenseless people. Yet she has suffered all with fortitude and stands ever ready to help in the onward march to freedom and power. Be not discouraged, Black women of the world, but push forward regardless of the lack of appreciation shown you. A race must be saved. A country must be redeemed. And unless you strengthen the leadership of vacillating Negro leaders, we will remain marking time until the yellow race gains leadership of the world and we be forced to subserviency under them or extermination. We are tired. We are tired of hearing Negro men say, there's a better day coming, while they do nothing to usher in that day. We are becoming so impatient that we are getting in the front race and serve notice on the world that we will brush aside the halting, cowardly Negro leaders and with prayer on our lips and arms prepared for any fray, we will press on and on till victory is over. Africa must be for Africans, and Negroes everywhere must be independent, God being our guide. Mr. Blackman, watch your step. Ethiopia's queens will reign again, and her Amazons will protect her shores and people. Strengthen your shaking knees and move forward, or we will displace you and lead on to victory and to glory.
Oh, give thanks and prayer. That was awesome. Garvey lives.
Garvey lives.
Mosiah lives.
Mosiah lives.
That was awesome. Awesome, my beloved sister. Once again, you've put us in connection with Mama Amy Jacques. You brought her alive in the spirit. You brought us again into her presence, into her divine prophetic presence, because when we hear the words that you were uttering, those were prophetic words that we have seen come to pass. And I just want to crown that in conclusion by saying that whatever the challenges of Mama Amy Jacques Garvey in making her commitment to the liberation of our people, whatever the challenges being the wife, and we have concluded that she had no problems presenting herself, introducing herself as the wife of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, that even beyond his passing into the realm of the ancestors, she continued to be his wife. She continued to put him out front. Not only did she do volumes, Philosophy and Opinions, volumes 1 and 2 in 1923-25, but after his passing, she wrote Garvey and Garveyism. After his passing, she wrote Philosophy and Opinions, volume 3. She didn't have to do that. Papa Garvey was gone. He could not have prevailed upon her in the way that he did when he was alive, but she was still committed. She went around speaking his name and speaking into his work and his spirit and his philosophy and keeping that spirit alive. And that tells us volumes about her commitment, not only to the liberation of our people, but her commitment to preserving the name and the legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the man who called her wife and the man she called husband. We close with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as we always do: unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai
Mari. God lives.
God lives.
Mosiah lives.
Mosiah lives.
Give thanks for Brotherly America. Give thanks, Sister Sheila, once again for taking us on such a spiritual journey that which we're never going to recover from fully. We've been moved in a way we haven't been moved before, Sister Sheila. We really haven't. And like I said, I pray it's not the last time we engage and take this journey forward sisters and brothers. So yes, give thanks and praises for that, Sister Sheila. Sisters and brothers who tuned in online, give thanks and praises once again for joining us for another Mosiah session. We say, as we normally close, with let's remember to take all that we've learned, all that we've gained in knowledge, information, and inspiration out into the streets, our place of work, place of study, amongst our families and friends. Let us remember always to be a shining light unto Africans everywhere. The Africans everywhere know that Mwadi, Nabukurane, Nudume, Sudume, Nabukurane, the African God, reigns supreme.
Reigns supreme.
The Africans everywhere know that it is a joy to be an
African.
The Africans everywhere know that liberation
is indeed at hand.
At hand. Tendai Mwadi.
Tendai Mwadi. Africa speaks, Brother Olatunji.
Africa Speaks, sisters and brothers. Tomorrow the link is in the chat. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. BST, 2 p.m. EST, sisters and brothers. Tune in. We're dealing with the Niger situation and the situation in West Africa as it develops. So give thanks and praises once again, sisters and brothers. And thank you and good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for tuning in. Sister Sheila, once again, it's been an honor and a blessing. Tendai Mwadi.
Tendai Mwadi.
Blessings.